If you're shooting bird video, it won't be too long before you try flight shots. I've been doing it for years and made this video to offer some of my experience to help you with the basics. My name is Steve Siegel. I've been a bird videographer since the 1990s. Back then, video was all on tape. Sensors were measured in kilopixels, not megapixels, and resolution couldn't hold a candle to photography. But the excitement of motion was there, and I stuck with video. Over time, the cameras improved, and today, video can pretty much equal photos in image quality. I shoot a Panasonic Lumix G8-7, micro four thirds with a 100 to 400 zoom. Micro four thirds offers longer reach than a full frame sensor, very useful for small birds. Flight video is not like flight photography. In flight photography, you can shoot handheld and fire away at your bird depending on a fast shutter speed, fast autofocus, and rapid bursts to get amazing shots. It's very likely that one of your images, cropped to get the bird center frame, will be just what you want. Video isn't like that. Handheld just won't work. You gotta use a tripod. Otherwise, instead of the bird just flying across the screen, it'll be jumping up and down with your body movements. If you're steady, the tripod head you use for photo work may be okay. A fluid video head, like this one, makes things much smoother if you want to spend the money for it. You can get one for $30 or $30,000 or anywhere in between. But in this video, I'm going to talk about flight shots where following the bird isn't necessary. It's a great way to start shooting bird flight. I'm talking about birds that nest in holes like woodpeckers or nest boxes like wrens. The nice thing about these birds is that your scene is always in the open. The birds are usually following the same flight path. They can't come to the nest from the rear behind a bunch of leaves. You can get two different types of shots, flying in and flying out. By shooting in slow motion, you can prolong action that may take less than a second to a couple of seconds and see parts of the bird that are not usually visible. The first thing you need to do is find the nest. In North America, woodpeckers begin excavating in early spring. By the end of April, they're digging in earnest. Just walk through the woods and follow any drumming or calling you hear. That's a good way to start. This will get you onto a pair's territory, if not to the actual nest site. It is often possible to identify your quarry long before you see it, as different woodpeckers have distinctive drum rolls they use. This is a northern flicker. Here's a hairy woodpecker. Here's a yellow-bellied sapsucker. Here's my favorite, Williamson sapsucker. Once you find a bird going in and out of a hole, you can be pretty sure that that's going to be the nest. Be sure you have a pad and a pencil with you. Draw a detailed map of where the nest is. Show specific trees. Count paces between landmarks and your car. Go back to the nest tree from your car. When you do this, you'll be going backwards from the way you mapped it. Getting confused is very easy. Once you find your nest, you will have May and part of June to film. Set up in a comfortable spot far enough from the nest not to disturb the birds. Picking a spot is very important. You need a clear line of sight to the hole. You want the background right at the hole to be something other than sky, because you'll probably want to get feeding shots as well as flight shots while you follow the family, and backlighting is not a good idea. I do not try to pan and follow the bird in. That's a fool's errand. It's better to leave the camera stationary. Listen for a signal that the bird is approaching. It may be a call. It may be cheeping from the babies. By some magic, they know when food is coming. Start filming before you see the bird. As a rule of thumb, I shoot at 120 frames per second and try to get the bird in view for 1 to 2 seconds. At 120 frames per second, in editing, it is simple to slow the shot down 4 times and still have smooth motion. Your 1 second becomes 4 seconds. If you get 2 seconds of footage, it's even better, but that rarely happens. If you're limited to 60 frames per second, slowing down 4 times looks a little jerky. 2 times may be better. You want to try to have the incoming birds flying across your field of view for these first shots. You should be far enough away to do that. Birds often fly in over exactly the same route. Pre-focus at that distance. In the morning, you will have ample opportunity to get multiple shots. As a rule, woodpeckers will approach the nest every 20 to 30 minutes. They come together, and a male with food will often hide and wait for the female to show up before going in. This minimizes the time predators can follow them to learn where the hole is. For the photographer, it leads to minutes of boredom, followed by a frenzy of shooting. Don't hurry, they'll do it again. Once you've finished with the wide-angle shooting and you know the birds a little, it's time to move in for closer viewing. You want to get either the end of a flight in or the bird flying out of the hole. Now the timing is not in seconds, but in wing beats. If you can get 2 or 3 wing beats, that's a good close-up flight shot. Your distance is a judgment call between close-up detail and length of flight capture, so play around. Most woodpeckers feeding babies get used to your presence pretty quickly. Try to keep a respectful distance. Certainly 10 feet is too close. Watch the background and the backlighting. Once again, play around with that. The birds aren't going anywhere. For these shots, I try to position the hole at the extreme right or left of the frame and near the top. The bird is often going to dip down a bit when leaving the hole. For incoming, it's more complicated, as the bird has a choice where to land, and it may come in above your field of view and scoot down to the hole. That's why incoming shots are difficult to get in real close-up. A couple of wing beats and a swoop to the tree is a good goal. All of these techniques apply equally well to birds nesting in boxes. The difference is that drinks, toilets, and a chair are probably available. Now a few words about camera settings. I shoot at 60 or 120 frames per second. My old stuff is at 30 frames per second, but back in the dinosaur days, that's all we had. I prefer to use photo-like shutter speeds of 1/500th to 1/1000th of a second for most flying birds, and faster than 1/1000th for hummingbirds. I don't like to stop my editing timeline and see blurry wings and soft eyes from low shutter speed motion blur. Some people believe that fast shutters give jerky video. They don't. I often want to pull a still from my footage, and a high shutter speed assures a sharp photo. This is just my preference. If you or a client want the movie look, there's nothing wrong with lower shutter speeds and shooting at 24 frames per second, which is the industry standard. Your lighting will be restricted shooting bird nests in the forest. You will likely keep the camera iris wide, f4.5 to 6.3 on most zoom lenses. Some increased depth of field comes from a smaller iris. If there's enough light, try it. Today's noise reduction softwares are so good that you can pretty much increase incoming light by upping the ISO with impunity. And while we're talking about light, it's so easy to accidentally overexpose the white parts of your birds. You probably noticed a few in this video. Most cameras superimpose zebra patterns over areas that are too white. They can be lifesavers when you're shooting in dappled light. But if you have a histogram, it is so much better. Just adjust the iris and shutter to keep the mountain from touching the right side, as shown here. If you found this video useful, please let me know in the comments section. I'm planning to discuss shooting waterfowl, shorebirds, hummingbirds, and raptors in future installments, so stay tuned. Hope to see you on the trail.